Hello everyone, welcome back. Eric Bird here. Today we are going to talk about resilience. As I had mentioned yesterday, there's been a lot of questions around resilience, and I reached out to many of you. Thank you for the feedback in regards to how you approach resilience, some of the challenging areas that you're running into. So I'm excited to dive into this topic with you today. Resilience is one of those topics you can spend all day sharing, discussing, having amazing conversations. I was on a walk with a good friend last night. We talked about resilience for a good 30 minutes. So it is a very, very powerful emotion and something that helps us in life if we are able to channel that. So what is resilience? And people look at this differently, but essentially resilience is how well do you handle adversity when it does happen, and how quickly do you bounce back, essentially. Because life knocks us down often. Life throws us curveballs often. How well do you respond when that happens? That's resilience. So that being said, looking at where we are right now, and I think this is why resilience has come up a lot as far as, hey, let's do a video about that. You know, with quarantine, with the months that we've been into quarantine, I think just like a marathon, in the very beginning, it was easier. It was easier to have mental toughness. It was easier to be resilient because it's those first few miles. We're not quite as tired, and it's easier to look at the bright side of things. All right, I have this free time. My schedule's wide open. I get to work from home. There's these changes, and it's easier to find excitement. But as time goes on, as you start to get to that middle of the marathon, you start getting a little bit more fatigued, and it becomes a little bit more challenging. And that's where the long-term resilience really comes in to play. So looking at resilience, we need to pivot quickly when the event happens. Right? The people, when you talk to them that are the most resilient, the people that you look up to and you admire their resilience, this event happens and then there's this pivot. There's a response that takes place and you need to be able to adapt in real time. What a lot of us do when a challenging event happens, and it rarely happens when we want it to, and then we have that visceral feeling of wanting to react, woe was me, why'd this happen, not again, and we start to have this negative response, which is to be human, that's natural. But the most resilient people, after they have that initial human response, they quickly go to a higher altitude. They'll go to 30, 40, 50,000 feet, and they'll get that bird's eye view perspective and go, okay, in the big picture of life, this is what matters most. This is how I'm going to handle this situation. This is not the end of the world. I'm going to get through this, and here's how I'll get through it. So you start to get that mindset, that process, that belief system that makes it easier for you to adapt to the situation that's in front of you. And when you start to go down that path of belief and resilience, you start to go down that path, you start to come up with solutions. You start to come up with processes. And just like anything else, it builds momentum, right? If we start to get a victim mindset, that starts to build momentum. If we start to have a resilient mindset and a positive outlook on the adversity that's in front of us to handle the best that we can, that also builds momentum as well. Now, when it comes to being resilient, you know, there's short-term resilience, and then there's that long-term marathon resilience, right? You can have that surprise, an event that happens today that requires you to be resilient in that moment. There's an adverse thing that happened today. For many of us, there's so many question marks that have happened during the quarantine season, but now daily, some of these are going away, and we're not getting the answer that we wanted. We're not getting the outcome that we wanted. And now we need to respond to that. We need to adapt to that, and we need to navigate through that. So these are these daily adaptations that we're having to take on. And then you have other ones that are these long-term ones, whether it's working on a relationship that we're in or in our career. It's something that takes daily resilience. And this is something that is not just that day. This is something that is months, years, decades that requires that long-term resilience. So you have that short-term response and then that long-term grit to be resilient. Now, resiliency happens in most areas of life. We see it in our careers, we see it in our relationships, and we see it in our health and wellness. And I'm sure many of you have certain areas of your life where you are ridiculously resilient and other areas where you're not so resilient. The cool thing is you have the ability to be resilient in all areas. That's why we're doing this video, is what can you do to help yourself be more resilient in those other areas. So when you talk to resilient people, and always do this, if there's someone you admire for their resilience, watch what they do and mirror what they do. But the cool thing is resilience, when you talk about it, it's not really a standalone word. When you ask someone, how are you resilient, or why are you resilient, they'll start talking about their faith, they'll start talking about their why, their passion, their purpose. So when I talk to all these people, I've concluded that resilience is really where grit meets purpose. When you combine the two of them, that's what makes you resilient. Because if you just go, I'm resilient, I'm going to be resilient in this situation, that doesn't create an emotional response. I'll give you a couple scenarios. And some of you have heard this one. So there was a few years ago, there was a Miami Dolphins football player, his boat capsized. And he was 9 miles offshore. 9 miles. And he was in the water, I believe, for over 15 hours swimming. Shark-infested water. And when you ask him what got him through that, he says, I have 2 daughters, and I'm getting to that shore. So pushing his body beyond what it wanted to do, his mind, and he held on to the idea of seeing his daughters or not seeing his daughters again. And that got him to keep pushing through those shark-infested waters to get back to that shore, to get back to his family. Now, obviously, that's an extreme situation, but he channeled that emotion to stay strong and be resilient in those shark-infested waters. So that's an extreme situation. That was a curveball that happened out of surprise. Now, more of a marathon and career example. One of my greatest friends in the world, I've known for 30 years now. I remember talking to him in his journey in his career as he continued to work for this role. He wanted this promotion, and he interviewed for it time and time again, over a dozen times before he finally got the job. And I remember speaking to him along that journey as this went on for years, and the emotions that come along with that and the frustration that comes along with that. But every single time it was, I'm just going to get better. I'm going to get better. I'm going to prove a point. I'm going to get there. I'm going to be the best candidate. I'm going to prove this point. And he just would not quit, would not give up. And he wanted to prove that point so bad. And he was so committed to getting better that he finally got the gig. He finally got the dream gig. Because, for a lot of us, when you look at the lack of resilience, especially in the career space and also the health and fitness space, right? We quit and restart. We quit and restart. If the job doesn't go the way you want, or if you don't get that job, a lot of people quit. And then they restart. And then a year later at this other job, then they do it again. Then they do it again. Then they do it again. Now, there are certain times when it is time to switch gears. I'm not saying that's not the case. But you've got to make sure that you gave it everything that you got and you were resilient and maximize that opportunity that you had in front of you. And sometimes it takes a decade to get that dream job, to get that outcome. Okay? So that's another extreme situation, but that is absolute resilience. Okay? So when it comes down to it, what is your emotional anchor going to be? There needs to be a reason for your resilience, your passion, your purpose, your faith, people that you love, that reason to get up, that reason to keep fighting, that reason to keep going. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I love when you reach out to me and you have certain topics that you'd like us to discuss. I enjoy having the conversations. You all make me better because I reach out and have these conversations with people that are dear to me, and it helps me grow as well. So I'm super grateful for all of you. Remember, we are in this together. We are stronger together. Continue to lean on each other. And you have the ability to be resilient in every single area of your life. You've been knocked down before. You keep getting up. If you're tuned in today, you've got up every single time. So stay strong. Keep going. And we'll catch you soon. Take care, everyone.